Liv, it's so great to see you. Thank you so much for joining me on the podcast. I'm so looking forward to talking with you.
Thanks for having me.
I have never met a professional female poker player.
There's not many of us.
No, and I'm curious about that. I'm also curious to know how you got into playing poker in the first place professionally.
Yeah. Well, I mean, I should caveat that I'm no longer professional. I retired officially 6 years ago now. Although funny enough, I did actually just have my biggest win recently out of the blue completely. So that's a whole interesting thing that happened. But yeah, I got into poker. I just turned 21, just graduated university. I wanted to be a physicist. That's what I studied, but didn't quite want to get a real job just yet. And I didn't know whether I wanted to take a gap year, do a master's, PhD, etc. And then that summer, I saw an advert saying, this is when I was living in the UK still, saying, could you use your powers of skill and deception to win £100,000? Sounded good. So I applied. And they wouldn't tell us what it was we'd be doing, but it turned out that it was like a reality TV show they were casting for, where they wanted 5 beginners who had never played poker before to teach them how to play. And then sort of the premise was like, which personality type is best suited for the game? And so that was my first time ever on TV, my first time ever playing poker. And I didn't end up winning the show entirely, but it was like coming home. Just was like, where has this game been my whole life? And so I started playing more, and it became clear I had, aptitude for it. And cut to a few years later, I turned professional. And yeah, never really looked back.
Were you sort of like a naturally competitive person? What do you think it was about you that drew you to poker?
Psycho. My whole shtick these days is like, I love asking people exactly that question, because I think people often lie on a spectrum, and people have different ways in which they're competitive, but I think it is possible to roughly align everyone on earth onto some kind of spectrum of like, not competitive at all, not really into games or any kind of sort of zero-sum interaction, rivalrous dynamic, all the way to like straight up warlord. I definitely had this like deep innate need to not only compete in whatever I was doing, but to be the best from a very young age, whether it was in sports or like academia. What did my friends get on that test? Was my number higher? And it was, I assumed everyone was like that. And it wasn't until I got a bit older and I was like, wait a second, I think I might be, this is, other people don't seem to care about this stuff like I do. But yeah, so I was always very competitive. And then, so when poker came along, it was like a very healthy outlet for that for me, because it was like, oh, great, I get to, this is a boys' game. I mean, it's mostly men that play, and yet it was an opportunity for me to actually compete against them on a level playing field. Because I didn't like losing to boys in anything either, but physically I could not compete. And so this was a way I could. And so that was a big part of it.
I know that your podcast Win-Win explores this question of competition and the kinds of competition that are good for us and bad for us. What would be an example of competition that you think is bad for us?
Well, what I've noticed, having now spoken to so many different people on this, and it seems like all the data points point at, competition itself is a neutral thing, right? It can be a force for great good. Most of capitalism is built off competition ultimately, and it drives innovation, creativity, all of these things. But some kind of like scarcity and pressure tends to make people come up with new cool stuff. But it can also, if the circumstances aren't right, then it can create these race to the bottom spirals. And similarly, if the internal sort of relationship people have with it is not quite set up in the right way, then it can make them behave in essentially psychopathic ways. And the thing that seems to correlate the most is when it's unhealthy, is when someone derives all of their competitive their reward system is set up such that they only care about how they do against everybody else as opposed to themselves. So basically, people who I think have a really healthy, like the top sports people who you think, wow, not only have they mastered their game and become like a true sensei at whatever they're doing, but they also seem to have a very healthy relationship with it, is because they compete against themselves, their prior versions of themselves as their main thing. And that is a thing that a lot of people, I think most people, in fact, come to a conclusion of quite early in life. But I didn't. Again, like I was like, why am I often like sort of jealous at other people's success? Why am I, feeling this I'm not satiated? I think a lot of it is because my sort of locus of the thing, my perspective was focused on how am I stacking up against the other people who I consider my competitors. I didn't view my own prior self as my own competitor. And that's where I think the healthiest relationship with it can be cultivated.
Do you think that competition is something that's more inherent to males than to females? Like, do you think that you are abnormal in this sense, that you're super competitive?
I think it manifests in different ways between men and women. There's a lot of intersexual competition among women. I think that's the way it usually does manifest. Because I mean, again, like, I don't think evolutionary psychology explains everything, but it explains the majority of things that we see in our world quite well, at least. It's definitely a strong indicator. And back in the old days, what were women really having to compete over? It would be like, even for just sort of survival and like having a good social standing in your tribe. And how would you do that? By being probably the most attractive to the most powerful men, the most appealing in some way. I think, especially in a very extremely patriarchal environment, which again, the jury's out on what like real hunter-gatherer tribes were like. There's some like evidence that there was matriarchal societies there too, but in a real cutthroat environment, it's the men that keep you alive. And how do you make yourself valuable to the men while being the most sexually appealing would be one way, right? So I think there's quite a lot of that still deeply ingrained in us. Even though I don't like the word patriarchy, I think there is still, ultimately men do have much more power in our society than women, like significantly more. Women still have some, and it manifests in different ways. But we still, perhaps as a legacy, but also because of our current environment, we still have to compete for, even in an economy. Like I noticed as a woman in poker, it's gotten a lot better, but certainly when I first got into poker, it was completely standard for all the poker media to constantly do like, these are the top 10 hottest female poker players. And they would rank us by our looks, not by how much we won or how good of a hand we played or like how upstanding of a games player we are or anything like that, our looks. And young Liv liked that because I would often get put at the top of the rankings. As I got older, I was like,
I don't know if I like this anymore.
But it was interesting how that would it would train you to think that way, and like that's my value in this industry. And don't get me wrong, like I lent into it because it was a double-edged sword. Like I wouldn't have gotten all the attention I had gotten if it hadn't been a young attractive female, for sure not. Like I won a huge tournament early on in my career, which was a big deal for anyone, male or female, but the amount I got, like I was on the front page of every poker magazine there was for like 6 months. And I was like the star of poker in 2010. And that was because I was a 25-year-old girl, ultimately. And so to come back to your original question, there are ways in which females are typically competitive. But overall, again, if we come back to that singular spectrum of just like lining the whole population up, overall, males tend to be more competitive in the classical sense of competition, like caring about look at who mostly plays video games, men. Actually sport is actually fairly even, but in terms of people who enjoy watching sports, mostly men. So the classic competitive pursuits tend to be, it's considered a more masculine trait. And it's interesting to see that a lot of the women that play poker at the top levels, the one thing that they all have in common is that they're very competitive. Like, you just can't be a top poker player or a top games player of any sort, I think, if you don't have that like obsessive drive that it takes in order to reach the top.
Mm. Yeah, and I think that like I don't love the word patriarchy either. I think
there's more baggage that comes with it, and it's been so misused and so on, but it directionally points at something, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just been totally overused, and so people hear it and their brains shut down. And also, people don't really know what it means because it's used in all sorts of different contexts. But I do think that, when we're talking about power in the modern world, men will often say, men of the internet in any case, will often say, well, actually, women have so much power in this world. And sometimes they'll go so far to say, like, women actually have way more power in this world than men do because they have sexual power and, they can manipulate men sexually and they can, get away with murder because they're attractive women, and women aren't held accountable because of this sexual power that they have. And of course, they get to decide who they have sex with, and that leaves some men out. Do you think that there's any legitimacy to that, or do you think that's sort of just something that bitter and resentful men say and project at women who won't sleep with them?
I think it's a bit of all of the above. I think there is truth that, there does seem to be like mating preferences. It seems to be that there's always those numbers thrown around where it's like, what is it, like 80% of women ultimately want the top 20% of men or something like that, which implies that it's not like perfectly assorted mating. And so that creates a form of scarcity where some men invariably sort of get left out. I think there is truth to that. Does that mean that all women are therefore have all the power? Of course not. It's a very, very, very narrow domain, which is not, which does have a power imbalance in a certain way. But there's so many different flavors of power. Power is like, it's like the word energy. It's like, what type of energy? Electrical energy, cognitive energy, blah, blah, blah. So when it comes to that specific type of sexual power, yes, maybe women have a bit more, but also there's a ton of sexual power men have over women. Like, there are plenty of heartbroken, as many heartbroken men as there are out there, there are many, many heartbroken women. Women's sexual preferences are a bit different to men. Men tend to value just having physical intimacy. Like, they just want physical relationships. That matters to them much more than perhaps emotional relationships. Again, this is all generalizations, but on average, there are many women out there who can't get the emotional security and like the loving relationship that they're desperate to have because they keep, whatever, they keep going for guys that treat them badly, they'll playboys or whatever. So in both of the sexes, there are people who end up losing out. And that's sad, but that's an unfortunate state of affairs of the world. But then, so that's just one little narrow branch of power. We then have economic power. Men clearly have more economic power than women in terms of just like literal money in the bank account, the ability to work. They tend to end up in more positions of power. Now, again, is that a systemic thing or is it an internal preferences thing? It's a bit of both. The whole wokeism movement was saying it's purely systemic. Women can't rise up even when they want to. I strongly disagree with that. I think, again, there is some element of systemic women being held down, but there's also, on average, a woman is a fewer percentage of women as a young age aspire to be a CEO compared to young men. So there's like a personality difference there as well. And then, other like political power, you know, keep going through them all. There's different distributions depending on the type of power. But no, I have sympathy for sort of the incel arguments. I would love to live in a world where there are no men left lonely and wanting. I would also love to live in a world where there are no women left lonely and wanting. And there is both in different ways. And it's sad. It's sad when anyone is lonely. I hate that. But to blame it all on men or all on women is just silly and low nuance. And it perpetuates the victimhood culture, which it doesn't solve anything.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that a lot of people who are feeling like they've been left behind unfairly sort of perpetuate their own victimhood and loneliness and, frankly, unattractiveness, because that attitude is very unattractive. The like, woe is me, life isn't fair. And, right. You know, leaning into that bitterness and resentment at, you know, oh, women only want a guy who's like 6'4" and looks like a jock and has a bunch of money and so on and so forth. And I'm like, man, if you look around, that's clearly not true. There are so many unattractive people in relationships in general. And there's plenty of guys who are frankly losers who have girlfriends, guys who don't have money. You know, it's not as simple as that.
And another thing that often gets, well, I think I've noticed as I've gotten older, you know, I'm 41 now. When I was in my like teens and early 20s, yes, I did care for I was typically more attracted to the more conventional type of men, you know, like the big dude with the muscles. Not so much money was not quite the thing that I was into, but like I had a certain physical aesthetic that needed to be. He had to be over 6 foot, blah, 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 blah. As I've gotten older and matured, I'm like, wait, those things really don't matter. Personality matters. Do they make me laugh? Are they kind? Are they wise? Those are the things that truly now like turn me on and I'm attracted to. I've had crushes on people I would never have thought in a million years I would have physically ever been attracted to as I've gotten older. And so it makes me wonder, I'm like, when these guys are like, oh, girls are only interested in the, you know, guys who are like, you know, the meathead dudes, the jocks, etc. I'm like, are you just going after 19-year-olds? Are you doing a Leo DiCaprio thing where you're only looking at girls under 25? Because yeah, guess what? They're immature. They're only going to like that shit. There's a bunch of awesome, like just try dating slightly older women. They are looking for much better things and they'll be looking for someone like you. And guess what? They're going to be way less drama. So I think that's a really underappreciated factor in that conversation.
And okay, so why do you think then that it is that poker is so male dominated? I mean, I suppose that there's probably a feminist argument that says that women are unwelcome in poker and they're made to feel marginalized and so on and so forth. There's probably arguments around competitiveness and the inherent competitiveness of males versus females, or maybe there's some kind of brain difference, or I don't know. What do you think?
I mean, yeah, you nailed it. It's a mixture of all of those. I mean, the ratios are incredibly extreme in poker. It's like something like, especially at sort of the highest stakes, it's like 98%. If you go into a high stakes tournament, you'll be lucky if there's 1 or 2 women out of like 150 men. And so that can't be pure nature or nurture alone. It is a combination of both. And so in terms of, I'll list through the sort of traits of what it takes, of the types of personalities that are typically attracted to high stakes poker. You have to be incredibly competitive, as I mentioned. You have to love abstract concepts and be willing to sit and just like nerd out with simulators and study these like mathematical solutions to the game. It's called like game theory optimal. You have to be like basically wanting to go down the rabbit hole of that and spend a lot of time just like in this abstract land. You have to be incredibly risk tolerant and be willing to lose, you know, put your own money on the line, large amounts of it. A lot of the time you lose. You can have losing months, years, even as a top player. So these incredible swings, So you have to be, you have to be incredibly risk tolerant. And in fact, not just risk tolerant, risk loving. So if you like go through those, it's like as clusters, again, if you had to like pick whether that was a more masculine or feminine trait. I mean, there is also an element of psychology as well in the game, which I would say that is the one which is, I would say, perhaps more feminine. If you look at like the distributions of people studying these types of topics, like game theory, mostly male in any game theory class in college. Psychology is probably slightly more female slanted. What are the other ones? Like anything risk, gambly, very, very male. Abstract math stuff, usually more male. So you have, that's the sort of more nature side of things, the intrinsic personality types that would be attracted to the game. And then you actually look at the environment of poker. Like, what is it like to be on the circuit and live on it? You are, I mean, if you're playing full time, you are living in a casino, spending a lot of time there. It's lots of late nights. There's a lot of often very unpleasant, mostly men around you, smoking, drinking, swearing, scratching their butts, getting aggressive at you, or hitting on you, sleazing on you, telling you you're not, you know, personally, I don't get that very much, but I know a lot of women who do get harassed or told that they're not, you know, a man loses to them and they get angry. So yeah, just generally being sort of like a sort of an ambient hostility. Or you're away from your family and you're traveling around the world. So again, that tends to be, as a system or a lifestyle, more appealing to men and particularly younger people, young guys. So, and then also, as I mentioned, like it's gotten a lot better, but there was always this sort of, historically, like girls were seen as sort of like an aesthetic sprinkle to the game as opposed to taken seriously as players. Although the industry has put a lot of effort into changing that, and I like really tip my hat to it because it's worked hard. So I think all of those things combined is why it's so heavily male skewed. But if I had to pick one, it's more nature than nurture.
Mm-hmm. What is, you mentioned game theory a few times. What's game theory?
Game theory is basically, it's a branch of economics. It's the math of competitive or collaborative interactions, where anything where there's some kind of like payoff or reward. So that's what a game usually is, right? There's usually some kind of score that you're trying to optimize for, some kind of objective you're trying to hit. And, you know, there'll often be like multiple players, and you can mathematically model that system. And that's what game theory is really a study of. But it's often called a branch of economics because technically there's game theory going on in the markets, and anything where there's like different agents interacting in a semi-competitive way, trying to like outmaneuver one another. That's a game.
Okay. I have just like kind of a random question. Because I mean, in professional poker, I mean, in any kind of sport or competition, like I'm thinking about chess or something of that nature, you wouldn't be drinking, but because poker is sort of, that's like part of the culture, and because poker playing happens in places like casinos, there's lots of booze around, so on and so forth. Do people drink when they're playing poker professionally?
So it depends on the game. Usually in the like high level tournaments, no, although it depends on the player. Certainly like the real pros, like the younger ones who take it as their full-time job, they treat it almost like, you know, you would expect a pro athlete. They're getting to bed as early as they can. They work out beforehand. They have a meditation routine. They're all into yoga. Maybe they'll take Adderall, but like they're not drinking, because you don't want anything that sort of dulls your senses. You want stuff that would sharpen your senses. It's also, you know, again, it was when I first started playing back in like the mid 2000s, it was much more of a drinking culture. I think worldwide, everyone is just drinking less. It's like drinking is out of fashion and other drugs are in now, right? But some games that are more, not like the big prestigious tournaments, which are kind of like the Olympics of poker, you know, or like the pro tennis tour, you have these games called cash games, which are typically private. They're often like underground, not physically, but metaphorically, where they're invite only. They're often built around, like, there'll be one or two pros trying to get in to play these really juicy big cash games, like a big cash game in Hollywood or Silicon Valley with all these like rich producers or actors who aren't actually good at the game. In those games, often pros will drink because they, you know, the Hollywood producer, he knows he's probably the whale here. He's the thing being fed on by the sharks. He doesn't want to sit against he wants to have a nice time. He's like, okay, if you want to come and play against me and over the long run take my money, I don't want to have you, like, at least be fun. I want to have a good time. So it's more of a social thing. Even though you're there to try and like actually make money, you need to create a fun social environment. And so then, and I don't play those games very often, but when I did, like, you drink, you have a good time because it's meant to primarily be a social experience. So then you will, and I mean, I've certainly been like blackout drunk at the poker table. Not very often, but I have.
How did those games go?
Mixed results. Mixed.
Yeah. I think I feel like I was listening to some podcast interviews with you, and I think I recall you talking about meeting your husband playing poker. Is that right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was another pro. We technically first ever crossed paths when I won that first big tournament in 2010. He was at my table at one point. He remembers me. I don't remember him because, again, not many girls, many guys. Also, I won it, so got a bunch of attention for that. But we became friends sometime after then, because it's kind of like when you're on the tour, it's like a big traveling family. You've seen the same people. Oh, we'll see you in Monaco next week, or see you in Australia. And we just became in the same friend group. And we were friends for a long time until it ever turned romantic. But, once it did, we never really looked back. 11 years now.
Amazing. Do you think that's the best way to get into relationships? Do you think like friends first, get to know somebody for a long time?
In my experience, yes. I mean, it's the one that worked out for me. And yeah, I mean, we were really like, I don't like the term best friends because but we were extremely close. We were really just solid friends. I saw him actually almost like my brother more. Like it was, he was so fully in the friend zone. I did not see him at all sexually. So like, that's an interesting thing, right? Like, because a lot of people say, well, once you're in the friend zone, you're done. And I would often agree, but I don't know, like with him, I came back out of it. I was like, wait, actually you are kind of cute. But I needed to be in the right headspace for it. And like, then once, it turned romantic, it was like, duh, he's been here under my nose this whole time. Like, so from my experience, yes, because like, if you're truly trying to find a life partner, my friend Tim Urban calls it the traffic test. It's like, you want someone who you get stuck in traffic and you're like, yes, okay, well, we get to hang out and just shoot the shit. I get to hang out and just talk with you. I don't know. I can't personally imagine being in a relationship with someone where I'm not like just able to have an intellectually or comically stimulating conversation at any given moment. So yeah, for me, seems like a no-brainer.
Do you think, did he see you romantically all that time? I mean, obviously the cliche is that men and women can't be friends. And I have had so many male friends over the years that I don't think that that's true at all. But of course, what a lot of people will say, I think probably primarily men will say, is that you're not really friends with these guys because they all secretly want to have sex with you.
Yeah, I mean, I've never been a man, so I can't fully model how they feel, but I've certainly had so many male friends, and I've been aware of the fact that, like, probably with those male friends, if I'd turn to them one night and be like, let's go bang, they say yes.
Yeah.
But that doesn't mean that I can't view them as a friend, and it doesn't mean that I don't think that they don't care about me as a friend. And I don't know. I think men can learn, like anyone can learn to compartmentalize. They can, I think it's entirely possible to be sexually attracted to someone and respect that they're in another relationship, to want the best for them. And I think it's not as easy for men. Because it also does cross my mind. I think usually if I have some kind of close male friend who I know is straight, it will at some point cross my mind, like, could we, but maybe it's easier for us women to compartmentalize, but I think it's possible for anyone to learn to compartmentalize. And I don't think there's anything wrong with it. What is the purpose of life other than to like figure out how to live with and keep our base instincts in check and use them when, be the masters of them as opposed to let them master us. And that's what practicing being friends with someone of the opposite sex is. Your life is richer if you can do both.
Yeah, that's sort of what my perspective as well. I'm like, well, people have boundaries. Like, just because you think about something or maybe would, it doesn't mean that overtakes or has to overtake anything. Like, obviously, probably the same thing. I'm sure many of my male friends, if I offered, they would say, okay, but that doesn't mean that that's what dominates our friendship. That doesn't mean that that's the reason that they spend time with me by any means. I mean, you can compartmentalize, as you say. But so did your now husband, do you think that he was thinking about you romantically before this became romantic, before it occurred to you, for example, that this could be a romantic thing?
Oh, I mean, 100%. He told me. Okay. He's like, well, I had a huge crush on you when I first met you. He was in a relationship. I was in a relationship. He was always, he never expressed it. He never showed it. He's like, of course, like you were like the hot poker girl. He's like, yeah, I had a huge crush on you, but it doesn't like, I just enjoyed you. I wasn't going to like, not then like be around you. I wasn't going to, just, it is what it is. And so he did. And then he actually lost it because I went through a difficult period, and I was like, he helped me a lot through that difficult period as a very good friend. And he said, I did not find you attractive during that period. Frankly, it was like, you were like my little sister that needed help. And then we didn't see each other for a few months. And then when we did, that was when I had gone through, enough of like, grow up that I needed to go through to able to see him in a new light as well. So that was like 2 or so years into our friendship. But yeah, I think sexual attraction to people can come and go, in both directions. It can emerge when it wasn't there before, and it can dissipate when it was there, and then come back around again. I think, people's, to me, like, sexual chemistry is a very fluid thing that will, like, people are on like this, and sometimes, like, a wave will match up and you'll resonate and off you go, and then it might, and I mean, you see that sometimes with relationships that don't last. They might be great for 5 years and then things drift apart. Maybe that was just how their chemistry was always going to go. But you can also, you can do things to nudge the wavelength of your chemical flow, or whatever the hell we're calling it.
Do you think that as a culture, we're getting better or worse at conflict? I mean, it would appear, if you spend a lot of time on social media and on the internet, that there's this massive extreme divide to the point where it could feel like people are living in 2 different worlds. Like, there really are 2 different realities. Whether or not that's true in real life, I think is debatable.
Yeah. I think, well, to take the synthesis view, again, I keep saying this, but both are all of the above. Both are true. In some ways, we are getting much worse, because especially with things like the Israel-Palestine conflict, like, people are truly, like, they can't imagine how the other side has this perspective that they have. From their perspective, like, the other side, like, they must be pure evil, because it means that they are supportive of genocide. And the other side is like, what are you talking about? There is no genocide. You're supportive of terrorism. And it's like, they are, to an extent, living in completely different realities, because once the algorithm, and I say the algorithm, like capital algorithm, but there are many different algorithms, but once whatever platform's algorithm figures out which side you tend to be more on, you're just getting fed more and more and more of that. And some of it is accurate, and so it's just reinforcing, and some of it's straight up like made up bullshit. But the point is, it's like, it's all confirmation bias. Confirmation bias is one of our biggest issues anyway, as human beings. We have our beliefs, which form our identity, and we accept any incoming information that confirms that identity and that belief and reject anything that might challenge it. That's what our confirmation bias is. And these algorithms are like turning that up to 11 more and more. And then couple that with generative AI, and it's just like, off we go. And so, yes, in that perspective, it is getting worse and worse. Simultaneously, it feels, and again, maybe this is my filter bubble, could well be, because many of the people I'm surrounded by, whenever I have conversations about this, people their eyes light up and they're like, you're right. Like, we need a new way. How do we do synthesis? People are hungry to find synthesis and to solve this problem. So that gives me hope, because it's like, maybe we just need a critical mass of people to be like, all right, I'm out. But at the same time, maybe we're going to lose. Like, I already have some friends who were like acquaintances, but people I, once knew, who I feel like I've just lost. It's like, I don't know how to get through to you. You don't know how, you try and engage on a conversation and it's just like banging your head against a brick wall. And it's like, when do you step back and just go, okay, this is your world, and I can't change it. But I do think we have those of us who are trying to do the synthesis thing have a duty to do it as one of the highest priorities as possible, because we want to save as many people from turning into that, basically becoming an algorithm, algorithm brained. And again, to be clear, I'm also partially, there are definitely things that the algorithm has me. I am confirmation biased on. I definitely have a horrible Twitter addiction, X addiction, and so I'm generally just aghast at my own self a lot of the time. But we have to keep fighting it. And someone calls it, someone I really respect, Daniel Schmachtenberg, he called it schismogenesis, which is it's almost like there's a force permeating through all of the different fabrics, different parts of reality, through digital, especially through the digital realm, of just creating schisms in everything that it can, pushing us apart. And we need some kind of countervailing force that actually brings us together to counteract this. Yeah, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think that it seems like there's some people, I don't like to see humans in this way, because I think that I actually fundamentally do see humans in a positive light. I like people. I don't think that the world is fundamentally a terrible place and that human beings are terrible. And so I don't really like to feel hopeless about human beings. But at the same time, it does seem like some people just are so desperate for categories and labels, because this makes the world simpler for them. So it makes it simpler and easier for them to understand or feel like they understand the world and what's going on, and who they can be friends with and who they can not be friends with, and what they can engage with and what they cannot engage with. So there's so many people in the world who are going to be like, oh, well, that person voted for Trump, so I'm going to write them off, and feel proud about that, not feel like, oh, maybe that's not a very nice thing to do, or maybe I'm missing something, or maybe I'm not understanding, but good for me. I'm writing them off because they voted for Trump, or because, I've decided that they support Israel, whatever that means. They don't see this conflict in the same way that I do. And yeah, I guess I worry that those people we can't get through to. Maybe that is a cynical perspective, I suppose.
Yeah, it's quite possibly the case that not everyone can be saved from this force. The general rules of thumb are again, to these people I know who I feel like they've kind of just become algorithm brained, just encourage that, offer human contact, friendship as much as you can. Obviously you need to have boundaries, because sometimes when someone's that deep, they won't they're so desperate to have someone believe them and be with them, and confirm what the strength of emotion that they're feeling. Because that's, most people are having such strong beliefs because they're truly good people And they just think that they've got, like, they're living in Disneyland, where they're like, here's the bad, Ursula, whichever Disney villain you choose, Jafar is this person or this group. And like, why can't you see? Like, you're just like you're under their spell. And it's like, the world is not that simple. And it's like this Disneyland black and white thinking. So just any way you can gently show them that, look, there was this instance where you were actually wrong, and that's okay. I'm wrong too, but yeah, it's, I don't know. It really, like, until we figure out how to fix the incentives on social media, because right now the incentives are aligned, that they're so strongly pushing us into into schisms, because the schisms are what generate engagement. The angrier people are, the more they keep coming back, the more they write, the more they engage, and therefore the more advertiser dollars the social media platform makes. Right. That incentive is so powerful that until we change that, I don't see this really improving. Now, it may be that you might reach like peak schism, where it becomes so fractured that actually, and I mean, we're already seeing that to an extent, like with all the whole, like the flight to blue sky, right? That is a whole, like, is literally a fracturing of people of a very certain type, political subset, and they now live there. So I wonder whether that, like, this fracturing at some point, it is bad for like X's revenue model, right? That's fewer users. So in theory, that incentive should then start to like drive them back into more bringing people together. And I know they're trying, but it's just so hard because you're fighting against like the lizard brain. All the while, social media is monetizing off human brains, which are probably, still under the influence of the reptilian brain. I don't know how. It's really hard to do. We need some kind of like nuance, some kind of nuance metric or something like that. Mm-hmm. There was a way to like, not like an up vote or down vote, but like, oh, well, this was a nuanced post. I give it probably a slide bar or something like that of how nuanced this post was. Like, that would be really useful feedback. And if you could incorporate that and upregulate that in the algorithm, that would probably, it's not good for short-term revenue, but long-term revenue, I think it would be very, but the trouble is everyone's tied to their quarterly shareholder meetings, and like, did number go up? Yes or no? And did it go up faster than last quarter? We're just plagued by short-term thinking everywhere. But yeah.
And I think people love those kind of extreme, oversimplistic statements that it's like, this is my opinion and this is the best opinion and this is the most right opinion, and everyone who thinks differently is wrong and bad, and people have something to rally around. Then I think that humans are drawn to that for some reason.
Mm-hmm. Well, and again, the algorithms directly reward it. If you capitalize a word on YouTube in your shorts, because I've been studying, like, I hate the YouTube algorithm. It hates me. We fight all the time because it's like,
I don't understand it at all.
Oh, so it's a black box. But like, if you on a short, if you capitalize the main word, then it tends to do better. And it's just like such lowbrow common denominator type stuff. And it's like, if that's what we are being directly rewarded for leaning into, no wonder everyone's becoming retarded. Like, come on. Yeah.
So what's your AI take? Are you an AI doomsdayer?
I reject the question, because it's impossible to, again, AI, like the earlier conversation about power, it's like, what type of power? What type of AI? AI for medicine, I'm incredibly bullish on. I think it's going to, I'm quite cautiously optimistic it's going to unlock a bunch of incredible breakthroughs for us. The protein folding thing that Google DeepMind have unlocked is like unbelievable.
I don't know what this is.
It was one of like the biggest like problems in biology, is like proteins are kind of like the machines of biology, and they're very complex structures, and how they fold up determines how they behave. But because they're so small, it's so hard to actually model these very complex shapes that they make. And so there've been like all these like prizes trying to like incentivize scientists to like figure this out. And DeepMind created an AI that outperformed every other form of like protein modeling predictions by, I don't know how much, but like blew them out the water, to the point that they've almost effectively solved the problem of protein folding, which has unbelievable implications for like drug discovery. Because like, again, if you know the shape of the protein, you can design the drug that will fit into it and make it do the thing that you need it to. So it's a really big deal. And we're just, this only happened a couple of years ago. And so it's going to take a little while to propagate as the science is developing. But things like that, I'm incredibly excited for, and like, yay, more of that. But even with something like that, typically as you unlock some new realm of technology, it comes as a double-edged sword. When we discovered that we could split the atom, amazing. Like, this is all this energy, like just sitting there waiting to be used. We need more energy to live our lovely lives. Great, we can split the atom. Oh shit, we can also build bombs with it. So you get nuclear energy, but you also got the nuclear bomb. Actually, the bomb came first, but same goes with like, if we can understand how proteins work and design all these amazing drugs, you can also design drugs that make the human body stop working. Like and because of the rate of propagation of this technology, these incredible godlike powers are going to become increasingly democratized, which means that, yay, great, that goes to all the benevolent scientists or good people and wise people, but it also goes to all of the lunatics and angry people and terrorists and blah, blah, blah. So that's obviously a big issue. So it's like, how do we get the upsides without all the downsides that come with it? And that's very, no one has a good solution. That's kind of the topic I cover on a lot in my podcast. I mean, there are definitely ways and things that can be done, like accelerate the defense technologies ahead of the offense ones, for example. So yeah, I'm bipolar on AI. I'm both optimistic and terrified.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of my biggest worries is that it's going to make us all stupid, because the way that so many people that I know and that I see online using AI is essentially as a brain replacement. Like, help me compose this, or literally compose this email for me. Of course, people are using it for that, but then also in terms of conflicts in relationships. Like, what does this mean that my ex said this to me, and how should I respond in text, or, formulating captions for your posts on social media, and, write this article for me. I just am like, worried that people's brains are going to atrophy.
Totally. I'm deeply with you on that. I had my husband Igor and I had a moment when I'm working on some like weird art video right now, and I was like, oh, what would be a funny thing for it to say in the background? He's like, well, just ask the AI, ask the AI for some ideas. And I was like, it was weird. It was almost like a visceral response. I was like, no. He was like, whoa, chill. I'm like, yeah, why am I so angry? Like, weird. And then we talked about it, and I realized, I was like, it's like that, this is such a you'll see this video, it's going to come out soon. It's basically like a fucked up music video thing that's about AI risk, funnily enough. And it's like, this is a piece of art coming from my soul, and like with my humor and my creativity. And it's like, if I outsource that to AI, what do I have left? Like what, like, it's fine. Okay. An email, like I'm on board. I don't personally, but I'm on board with people being like, oh, I need to respond to my accountant with an email. Fine. Use an AI for that. That is not like a piece of creative work. But like, if we're going to outsource literally like your life's work, art piece, even the ideas for that, I don't know, let's at least have a bit more information about what it means if we do that. And people like outsourcing, oh, what are ideas? Imagine you want to propose to your girlfriend. I don't know, I would feel definitely a little sad if my fiance, it turns out if I see a chat history where he like asked all the ideas of what to say, write my wedding vows. The AI writes someone's wedding vows. Do you want that? Okay, maybe some people are like, yeah, I don't care. Okay, fine. You do you. I think we are losing something deep when we do that. And so, yeah, I'm with you that there are like, and the thing is with these technology, it just creeps. It creeps and creeps and creeps. And sometimes you don't know what you've lost until it's gone. You know, like it used to be standard when someone gets to some beautiful view at the top of a mountain that you would just sit there with your friends and like take it in for 15 minutes. Oh, and then someone gets out the big old camera and like, oh, let's take some pictures. Now you look at people when they get to the top of a mountain or like some vista or something. If they don't already have their phones in their hand, usually the first thing they do is like take pictures. And then maybe they'd sit and enjoy it. And I don't know, like intuitively, that feels like there's something's gone wrong there. Like technology can... People say, oh, it's technology doesn't, humans will always be humans. It's technology is just a thing that they use. It's like, no, technology is shaping us. It shapes our behaviors. And there's no guarantee that those new behaviors are actually what we want. You said, I was out for dinner, like at a lunch place, and there was this family sitting there, clearly out for family lunch. And the mum and the two kids were just on their phones the entire time, almost the entire time. Mm-hmm. And the dad was just sitting there alone, like literally like alone, just looking around. And I was like, it like broke my heart. It was just like, what? And for whatever reason, he felt like he couldn't say to the wife, and the wife was clearly in it, and the kids are in it on their iPads. And it's just like, what is this? This is like their family lunch, and they're not talking to each other. And I know it's so sad. And I could see AI going entirely in that direction. I was quite, I'm very, how to say, concerned, I guess, skeptical that AI girlfriends will be a good thing for the world. I buy the argument that there might, again, some people might be so far gone that that's actually their best attempt, their best hope of finding cures for their loneliness. Okay, great. But if you're building AI girlfriends, then design it specifically for people who you feel like, if that's your intention, oh, I want to give people lonely people some kind of respite. Great. How do you make sure you design this technology so that it doesn't make more lonely people who need it? How do you design it so that it's not engagement maximizing to pay off your investors? Really hard to do, but like the onus is on you as a technology builder to do that. And I don't see anywhere close to the level of responsibility that should be being commanded and like care and consideration by the people who are building these things. Nowhere close. For sure. They're just like, decide later, and it's like, well, humans will do. No, you're designing what humans will do, then do it right. So yeah, it's definitely, that might be the actual, people talk about like the misaligned superintelligence. I think that's also a concern, by the way, like the classic, we lose control of the superintelligent AI. That is still definitely a possibility. I'm agnostic on what the percentages are of it, but in some ways we've already got a sort of superintelligent AI, which is the algorithms we're all addicted to on social media. They're driving our behavior, and we completely lost control of them. We couldn't turn them off if we wanted to. It's like our economy is tied into it. Our everything is tied into it. So like we're already under the influence of it. And I think we need a reckoning with this.
For sure. So you're super involved in, would you say like trying to reform factory farming? I know that the treatment of pigs in the pork industry is really important to you, for example. I wonder if you can explain the situation there and what you're working on and what you're fighting for there.
Yeah. So, I've eaten meat most of my life. I tried to be a vegetarian a few times, but I can't really do it. And I grew up in a farming family. Or at least surrounded by a lot of farms. I've had friends who were farmers. By and large, their animals were kept very well. The classic quintessential English countryside, animals living outside, living reasonably natural lives. Love that, support it. What people don't realize is the vast majority of animals, wherever you are in the world, but especially in the West and in China and like developed nations, the vast majority of animals are kept in like really horrific conditions for the vast majority of their lives. Cows on average have it not too bad because it's just really hard to keep cows in tiny enclosures, although some do just live in barns and don't really get to roam fields, but they're generally okay. But chickens, pigs, overwhelmingly are kept in conditions that, like, if you saw someone treat a cat that way for even like a day, you would freak out. Like, we're talking, there's these things called gestation crates where they are just wide enough for an adult pig to fit into, just long enough so that, I mean, their noses usually stick through the bars and their butts are sticking out the back, but they can't move forwards and backwards. They can, no chance they turn around. And they live in those for months or years on end. They might get taken out for like to go get inseminated again or something, and then they get put straight back in again. And that is their entire lives until they die. Like, imagine like you doing that to a dog, like putting a dog in such a tiny crate that it can turn around for just a few hours. You'd like get hauled off by the, you know, RSPCA or whatever animal charity. And that's how 98+% of pigs in America currently live. People don't realize it. Because the pork, it's called like big pork, the big agriculture, like these big giant corporations, the furthest thing from these old school, like small family farms, most of them have all their operations in Iowa and these like central states. The biggest company, Smithfield Foods, is actually owned by a Chinese, it's like a conglomerate, basically. They're all doing this, and they are paying off government left, right, and center to just keep this quiet. They tried to get laws passed where you can't even go and film on one of these farms. And so the animal welfare considerations aside, this is also terrible for humans because these things are these kind of conditions are so hard on the animals' bodies. They have to be pumped full of antibiotics just to keep them alive. Like, they can't lie down properly. They've just got sores on them. They're festering, broken limbs. And you're eating that. Mm-hmm. It's you know, we've already got like this antibiotic resistance crisis growing. These 40, I think it's something like 40% of all antibiotics used in America, including all hospitals and everything, are used on pig farms. So it's like, it might even be more than that, but like that's an approximate estimate. It's used, they're used in the most irresponsible ways as well. Like, the farmers don't care. They're just like trying to, like, it's like a giant faceless machine churning out like the most low quality toxic meat imaginable and feeding Americans with this. And it's horrific. So there's that. And then probably the next pandemic will come from some kind of battery chicken farm or something like that. Because again, you've just got, you know, the bird flu crisis that's a ticking time bomb. Because if you keep animals in such like cramped, squalid conditions, you're just creating this like petri dish for novel pathogens. So anyway, it's a really big problem that people don't realize how bad it is. And it's just like a lose-lose for everyone except for a small number of giant corporations who already have great profit margins. And that's the other thing. Like, they think, you know, people say, oh, well, meat will be too expensive. It wouldn't. It's actually cents on the dollar. The difference between keeping a pig in a gestation crate versus in a slightly larger pen, which is just a bit better, like a few cents difference, at most like 5 cents on the dollar. And they use the argument that, like, you know, because they care about their bottom line, they don't care. So yeah, it's a big passion of mine to try and solve this.
And like, what do you suggest that people do if they care about this and do want to change things?
Yeah. First of all, thank you for asking, because very few people actually ask about this. There's a thing that is trying to be pushed through by Trump's agriculture appointee, Brooke Rollins, and a couple of senators. The Iowan senator, Joni Ernst, is one. There's another guy, the Arkansas guy, I can't remember his name. But they're trying to push this thing through called the Food Security and Farm Protection Act, which will, if it passes, overturn some states like California, like years ago, voted to ban these crates, the very worst type, because they were like, this is bad for our consumers, it's bad for everybody, it's bad for the animals, we don't want this. And like, California democratically voted to ban this practice. They won't sell the meat in their stores. The farmers aren't allowed to use it, etc. And these senators who are all in the pocket of the big pork lobby are doing everything they can to try and overturn it, so that basically taking us backwards. So trying to undo all the good, and to be clear, it's nowhere near sufficient. It's called Prop 12, the law that banned it in California and some other states. So if they get this through, that not only, and by the way, the Supreme Court have rejected them trying to overturn this, because they're like, you're trying to do a federal law and overturn states' rights, which is a very un-Republican thing. And the way they're doing it, the way they frame it is like, we're doing it to save the small family farmer. The small family farmers aren't the ones doing this shit. The small family farmers are the ones going out of business by these big corporations, who are the ones doing the practice. So it's just so perverse in every single way. It's just lies and corruption the whole way down. And the way to stop it, because it's going to be passing through, I think it's going through a Senate hearing now, and then it will be going through Congress, is to basically please just write a letter or email or pick up the phone. Turns out you can actually just contact your senator and say, hey, this is really bad. Please do not support it. We don't accept it. This is horrible for our health. This is horrible for everyone. Horrible for states' rights. I can't remember the URL, but if you look it up, Food Security and Farm Protection Act, just tell your senator to reject it.
Okay, thanks. I appreciate that. I mean, I'm a big meat eater, and I recommend eating meat to everyone I know. I think it's really important for human health and development, and it makes me feel good personally. But I'm also I care about animals, and it makes me feel horrible that this is the situation. And then I think people end up feeling kind of helpless because these industries are so big, and it seems like such a big, overwhelming problem. So yeah, I really appreciate you talking about this and sort of leading people in a direction that they can, feel useful and feel like they're getting somewhere.
And I mean, the thing is, there are countries like Slovenia have just banned all cages. They're like, no, you can't cage chickens and you can't cage pigs. So you can still, and the meat industry is not going to go out of business. They're going to just make a little bit less profit, and it helps. You do not want to be eating this meat. From a biochemical standpoint, it's just full of all these hormones and chemicals. It's the least paleo thing imaginable. People are like, oh, I like eating meat because it's natural. I'm like, that shit ain't natural. You think you're doing paleo, you are not. But a nice grass-fed, free-range animal, by all means, yeah, that's paleo. That's good meat. And they're just trying to force everyone to eat sludge, effectively.
Gross.
Yeah.
It was so great to talk with you. I really enjoyed this conversation. Tell us where we can find you online.
Chronically online on X. Yeah, that's probably the best place. And then on YouTube, or if you like podcasts, please come check out Win-Win, my podcast. Talk about all this kind of stuff, but not just factory farming. I talk about more fun stuff, but that would be the best way. Thank you so much for having me. This was fun.
Yeah, I enjoyed this. I hope to see you in real life again someday soon. Thanks a bunch.